Well, we've now come to the third and final strand of today's debate, which addresses the key challenges that the European Union is likely to face in the future. And I would now like to ask us to join us, the President of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso.
Mr. Barroso, you've seen a lot of things during the last 10 years that you are presiding the European Commission. I would like to ask you how confident you are that the current policy will not lead to even bigger inequality, even more extremism in the European Union. What is the absolute political priority for the EU in order to avoid that?
First of all, good morning to everybody. Thank you for inviting me, Ramon, my good friend, and also the president of the region of Attica, and I will answer directly your question. The absolute priority is jobs, jobs, and jobs, employment. And for that we need growth. We have gone through the most difficult part of the crisis. I believe the most difficult part is behind us. Some countries, including this country, Greece, my own country, Portugal, Ireland, Cyprus, were in a desperate situation. I'm not exaggerating the word, desperate. It could have been much, much worse. Some of the countries had not the money to pay the salaries until the end of the year, when they've asked for support from the European Union. And so I know that many sacrifices were asked, but frankly, I think there was basically no other way. Because if the countries in question would not be able to show determination to correct some of the problems in terms of huge deficits or in terms of a completely unacceptable behavior from the banks, then there will not have been possible to restore confidence. Confidence is now coming back. Ireland exited the program. Ireland is now having a good level of growth. Portugal, my country, will exit the program in May. Greece, according to our estimates, will have a primary surplus that did not happen in 60 years. And now we expect already this year growth of around 0.9, and next year even above 2%. So we know the difficulties, but you are also leaders. You are leaders of the regions or the cities. You know very well that nothing comes without effort. And we have to be realistic. It was very important to show the capacity to control the huge deficits, to put the banks in order. We are still doing that. But now I think we have to come to a second phase, a phase where growth is, of course, the center of all our actions. But frankly, we could not have growth if we did not make this kind of corrections of some imbalances. Because we have seen, and I think all of us have learned the lesson, that growth supported or based on high levels of debt, public debt or private debt, is simply not sustainable. That is artificial growth. And now what we need is sustainable growth, more inclusive growth, and I'm confident that the European economy is going to get out of this crisis stronger than before, resilient, and we have already seen now that the first signs of recovery are there. Because we live in a world, we are not out of the world, a world where there is tough competition and we have to become more competitive. So we have to pursue some reforms to make our economies, because there are different situations in Europe, fit for globalization, fit for the 21st century. So based on the 10 years of experience that you mentioned, and sometimes working, I can tell you, day and night, looking at the spreads of all the countries, I tell you that I'm confident about the future of Greece, of the so-called more vulnerable economies and of the European Union and the euro area as a whole.
I want to build a little bit on this message of hope that you have, because we often speak about macroeconomic elements, but the people of Greece are suffering blows to their finances and also to their dignity for years now. And now they feel also hostage to a friction between the creditors. What is the message of hope that you can give to the Greeks in terms of their future within the EU?
I trust very much Greece. I admire very much this country. I know the resilience of Greece and the Greek people. I've been all over the world, and all over the world I've met very dynamic Greek communities. So frankly, I think this country has all the resources to be a leading country. I'm against stereotypes and prejudices. Things can change for the better. Just an example. Greece was, until 2 years ago, one of the worst performers in terms of absorption of the structural funds. It was one of the 3 countries that were less able to use the structural funds, the regional funds. I have created a task force for Greece. We have cooperated with the Greek authorities. Now Greece is the 4th. Among 28 countries, Greece is one of the top performers. So you see, there is no fatality. Things can change for the better. And I'm sure that Greece, that over the centuries has shown this resilience, is now able also to correct some of the problems that exist in this country, and we know what they are, in terms of the public administration, in terms still of, now it's been correcting, but in fact, tax evasion, tax fraud, problems that exist also in the way the state relates to the society and the society to the state. This is something that is very important. And we have seen that now, this year, we already expect positive growth to Greece. Next year as well, even bigger. So imbalances are being corrected. I personally believe that the efforts of Greece and the reforms have been underestimated. And there are some reasons, objective reasons, why Greece was not doing so well, let me be very frank with you, as Ireland or Portugal. The reasons were, first of all, Greece was getting that crisis in the most difficult moment also for the euro area. And so there was a lot of skepticism around the world. Do you remember that some time ago people were predicting the implosion of the euro? I was speaking with President Obama, with President Putin, with President or Prime Minister of China, the Prime Minister of Japan, Brazil, and they were asking me in the G20, do you believe the euro is going to resist or it's going to implode? Do you believe the European Union will be able to stay, or will be the disintegration of Europe? And I've said always, I believe it's going to stay. But don't you think that Greece has to exit the euro? In January 2012, I invited the chief economists of the most important banks in Europe to have a brainstorm in the European Commission in Brussels. Do you know what happened? All of them, except one, said by the end of this year, 2012, Greece will be out of the euro. And I said, you are wrong. Greece will be in the euro. Because they were underestimating the political factor. They were underestimating that in spite of all the difficulties, the Greek people that is very committed to Europe wanted to stay in the euro, will not want to fall in another category. So the point is that extraordinary resilience. But there was another 2 points that were making the life of Greece more difficult. Not only they were the Greeks to suffer the first impact, they were also the country where there were very difficult political situation. Elections, instability, governments following, all these comments about the referendum created instability, uncertainty, and you know investors do not like uncertainty. So the political management here was not the best. Third, and this is important for you to know, the comments coming from outside, including from some members of the euro area, saying that Greece will not be able to do it, was extremely negative. While regarding Ireland, there was since the beginning a positive expectation. Regarding Portugal, relatively positive. Regarding Greece, there were messages coming from the outside saying Greece is not going to do it. And that had a very negative impact in the markets and the market's perception. This explains why the Greek case is to some extent special. But Greece was able to resist to this. And that's why I'm sure that if there are no errors and if there are no complacency now, if Greece remains committed to the reforms, and we are now, I hope, finalizing, I would like this next week, I hope, but depends also on the Greek side, finalize this review. I believe there is no reason why Greece would be less able than Ireland or Portugal or Cyprus, that is also making now big efforts, and Greece will not be able to join the group of the most, let's say, successful economies. There are some prejudices in Europe. I'm a man from the south. My country is from Europe, from Portugal, from the south of Europe. I know that sometimes there are cultural prejudices. I don't like those stereotypes or prejudices. I'm sure that the Greeks are as able as any other in Europe, and I've seen that in my life. So my message to Greece is one of hope, and we as the European Union will stay to support Greece, provided, of course, the Greeks are able to stay the course of it, what is more competitiveness, and now to make the necessary reforms to have sustainable growth.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Karen?
Thank you very much, Mr. Barroso. And I may move the next question a little bit beyond the terrain of the European Union itself, because it's about Ukraine. And of course, we're here at a time when the crisis in Ukraine is dominating global headlines. It's an extremely fluid and dangerous situation there at the moment, as you well know. Crimea wants a referendum now on whether to join Russia or stay with Ukraine. The security situation there remains extremely tense. Russia's warning against having sanctions imposed on it. Now, the EU, of course, has been involved in the Ukrainian situation for some time now. But right now, what do you think are the most effective steps that the EU can take to try to resolve this crisis in Ukraine?
Some of the steps were already adopted unanimously by the heads of state and government in Brussels the day before yesterday. I was in that meeting, and I was very happy to see that all the 28 heads of state and government were able to agree on a common set of measures. Political, diplomatic, also economic. Political and diplomatic, showing clearly that what is happening in terms of not respecting the unity or territorial integrity of a country is simply not acceptable, and that there will be consequences if this is not respected. There was a very firm reaction from all the heads of state and government. We received in Brussels Prime Minister Yatsenyuk. It was a very good meeting, expressing also our political solidarity with the government and the people of Ukraine. But we went beyond that. The day before the European Council, the European Commission presented a package of financial support to Ukraine. That is around 11 billion euros for the next years, but we consider there grants and loans. It's not all grants, part is loans. Part of it will be given through the European Investment Bank and the EBRD, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. And we are now working to do everything to put as soon as possible the necessary macro-financial assistance, because Ukraine has a problem of treasury. So I think this was also a very good manifestation of the solidarity. It's a very complex issue, as you know, Ukraine, but it's in a way a lesson. During all these months, when the previous president of Ukraine did not want to sign the agreement of association with us, that it was already initialed, we saw thousands and thousands of people, by freezing temperatures, waving the European flag, showing their adherence to the European values. They want to live like we live in the European Union. We have many problems, but we have a respect for human rights, rule of law, and we have a certain level of prosperity. More than 100 people already died for these values in Europe. In Ukraine, so to follow the values of Europe. I think we have a duty of solidarity with that country, and we'll work to have them as close as possible to us. We have decided also immediately to sign, because it was requested by the Prime Minister of Ukraine, sign the political chapters of the association agreement, which means that Ukraine will seal its association with the European Union. That's what I think what we can do and should do now, but of course we'll do it in a way, and we are trying to do it in a way that is peaceful. Our goal for Ukraine is very clear. It's peace, stability, prosperity. We don't have any ambition regarding Ukraine. What we want them is to decide their future. And we are trying to make clear to our Russian partners that the association of Ukraine to the European Union is not against Russian interests. We don't want a confrontation about Ukraine. I think it's not acceptable that in the 21st century we still have this issue of balance of power between countries and annexation of parts of another country. This is simply not acceptable. What we need is to have peace, and regional peace, continental peace and global peace. That's why I still hope that there will be an effort to achieve a peaceful solution, a negotiated solution that has to include, of course, the government of Ukraine, and we as European Union are, together with our partners, together, of course, with the United Nations, ready to work for peace in Ukraine and peace for all Europe, because peace is the most valuable good that we have in Europe. That is something that we were able to keep in Europe also because of the European Union. That's why 2 years ago we have received, I was part of that ceremony with such honor, we have received the Nobel Peace Prize. It was thanks to Europe that we have been built and consolidating peace in all this continent, thanks to the European Union. We have the same approach to Ukraine. Let's hope that all the others have the same approach and that we can de-escalate the situation and let that country decide their future.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barroso. Perhaps, thank you. Perhaps, Mr. Valcárcel, we could get your responses to what Mr. Barroso has just said.
It's difficult to add something to what was already said by Mr. Barroso with regard to the Ukraine. I was in the Ukraine with a group of members of the Committee of Regions in January, and there we had the opportunity to meet with local authorities and municipal authorities and with individuals that were part of that opposition in Maidan Square. We also met with the daughter of Yulia Tymoshenko, and this indeed was it was very important to hear what she had to say. She was indeed, she explained to us what the situation was, and also we heard about the cruelty of that government. It was a government which was corrupt, there's no reason for me to repeat here in Athens all of that, but we heard a lot, and what we did see there is that the European Union is more necessary than ever. The economy, the values, so many different individuals which have been direly affected by the crisis. All these people need Europe. And irrespective of all of this, more Europe is absolutely necessary. After seeing the reality in the Ukraine, Europe shined like sparkled like a diamond more than ever. Like I said earlier on, where the European borders stop, on the other side of those borders are problems like what we see right now in the Ukraine. So, European flags European flags waving there in the Ukraine. Individuals who put their life at risk. Hundreds of people died. It really was truly moving. It was truly effective indeed to see these European flags waving in Maidan Square. But the idea, the principles, the values of the European Union, and we saw that these people wanted to be with us, they wanted to be part of us, and they really put their life on the line in order to be with us. Thank you.
Ask you to remain seated, and if I can invite you now, Mr. Barroso, to make your keynote address.
At this point, Mr. Valcárcel can go to join the rest of the people.
Okay.
We'll have the keynote speech by Mr. Barroso.
You can stay. ¿Me permiten solamente un minuto? Presidente Barroso.
Perhaps you allow me just to take 1 minute. This is the last time I'm going to be speaking at this event, and there's something I feel I must say. First of all, I'm grateful to Mr. Barroso for having joined us here, once more showing the importance he attaches to the Committee of the Regions. He believes and continues to believe in what we represent, those of us, that is, who carry responsibility in local and regional councils. So thank you once again to the President of the Commission, Mr. Barroso. I'd also like to thank the Governor, Mr. Skouras, right from the beginning, against all obstacles, he's been with us. He believed that we should hold the summit here in Athens. It was a difficult time. Circumstances were not ideal, but he was committed to it. And thanks to his commitment, he organized this summit meeting. So, Governor Skouras, congratulations. On behalf of all the members of the Committee of the Regions, I think I can say this has undoubtedly been a memorable summit meeting, perfectly organized, with the hospitality and human warmth that we associate with Greek people. And this is something which bears out the reputation not just of Athens and Greece, but also the Committee of the Regions. So thank you very much, Governor Skouras, and thank you everyone else for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me tell you it's indeed a pleasure to be once